Anyway, let's take a look at Trump's executive orders now.
Some of them more symbolic, like the effort to rename the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America on official U.S. maps. One of the many changes he's trying to make as the executive without the approval of Congress. Nancy Cordes has been keeping track of all of it out of Washington. Nancy, it was a lot. Good morning.
It really was a lot, Tony. Good morning to you. Among the many executive actions Trump took yesterday, he pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accords again, froze hiring at the Internal Revenue Service, and he took a step toward denying birthright citizenship, even though it is authorized in the Constitution. Now, some of these moves are bound to face legal challenges, but he said he thinks he will win.
That's a big one. A lot of big ones, huh?
President Trump began signing a blitz of executive actions barely an hour after taking office, with aides providing stacks of orders.
Could you imagine Biden doing this? I don't think so.
In event after event.
This is a big deal. Merit.
He halted a ban on TikTok.
What's next, dude? Are you guys going to tell me that Donald Trump also has Hitlerian politics? I mean, come on now. Hitler did the Holocaust. It was what, like 12, 15 million total? Donald Trump wants to do that to 20 million. Very different number. It's not the same. Donald Trump wants to do it to a different population, undocumented migrants, and maybe even documented migrants as well. If it's not the exact same number, it's not Hitler. That's how it works. Also, if it's the exact same Sig Heil salute, it's still not Hitler.
U.S. should be entitled to get half of TikTok.
Wait, deporting equals the Holocaust? What the f, Hasan? Well, do we have a German AFD supporter in the chat? Because that's really interesting. Or maybe you are just unfamiliar with the history of how the Holocaust was implemented. It did not happen overnight where someone was like, oh, let's hit the kill button. It actually also started with a mass deportation policy. It was called the Madagascar Plan. It does not start with, let's execute all of these people after putting them in concentration camps. It gets to that point.
Cartels as terrorist organizations, and held an impromptu press conference in the Oval Office. It all capped a frenzied first few hours on the job. The president taking the oath of office.
I, Donald John Trump.
And saying the country's golden age starts now.
America's decline is over.
Then he laid out how he plans to do just that.
I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. It will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Forced into the Capitol by biting cold, Washington officials in many ways had a warmer welcome for the 47th president this time around. But after an inaugural address focused on the future,
2020, by the way, that election was totally rigged.
Trump returned to some familiar themes as he spoke to supporters right afterwards.
Liz Cheney is a disaster. She's a crying lunatic.
You and my Bill Maher dad got the exact same take on deporting undocumented migrants. If your dad is a Bill Maher stan, though, so if all those people are deported without getting killed, what are you to say? Wait, first of all, deportation is inherently a violent process. What are we talking about? You think that it's justifiable to deport 20 million people living on U.S. soil? No, I still think population transfer of this sort is still inherently fascist and completely unacceptable. No, man. Justifiable? No, man. It's degrees of different violence. Dude, what a crock of shit this is. I need you to understand something. Deportation of that sort, logistically, is one, it's inherently violent, and logistically will lead to ethnic cleansing no matter what. And look no further than the many different instances where in American history, this exact same thing has happened. Dozens of my family members were systematically slaughtered. If they just got deported, I would have had hundreds of relatives that I don't have now. Dude, I'm sorry, chatter. I genuinely despise people who come in here and consistently go, no, it's his own special thing. Shut the up. The entire field of Holocaust studies and genocide studies in particular actually is against you. People did not study the Holocaust so they could always say, no, that's its own unique thing. Why does the ICJ look at the intentionality rather than the pure number of people that have been cleaned from an area, ethnically cleansed from an area? This doesn't make any sense. Think. Or do you think that there is some additional takeaways from that to make sure that this doesn't happen again? We must study how it got to that point so that we can stop it before it gets to that point again. Because if you say, all right, my bad, after the fact, well, too late, don't you think? It's a little too late at that point.
Earlier, Trump and First Lady Melania returned to the White House for a transition tradition.
What's the angle behind designating cartels as terrorist organizations? Designating anyone or anything, no matter how violent or evil they might be, as a terrorist organization is specifically done to deny habeas corpus and to violate the normal due process that would exist in that situation. And because they're a terror cell now, you can sign off on special operations, invade Mexico basically with your military force to target these terror cells. At the internally inside of the United States of America, you can utilize the military to say, we're fighting, we're combating against terrorism. These are cartel operatives within U.S. soil. They don't actually have to be cartel operatives, but you can now use that as a justification. You can also violate Mexico's sovereignty by saying, well, you can't deal with your cartels, so we're going to have to deal with it, and then conduct both raids internally and also conduct military operations on foreign soil.
With the outgoing president, one Trump had denied the Bidens 4 years ago.
Did you like my speech?
But only hours later, the new president insulted his predecessor.
One of the worst administrations in history, maybe not one of them, the worst.
Later, in the Oval Office, Trump was asked whether Biden left him a letter with advice, another presidential tradition.
He may have. Wait. Don't they leave it in the desk? I don't know. Oh.
Designating anyone as a terrorist is only and only done to justify killing them. Exactly. This is the same reason why Israel says they're fighting Hamas. Because if they were to say openly, and sometimes they do actually leak it, but if they were to say openly that like every Palestinian Arab is violent no matter what age and we must kill all of them, which they literally do still say sometimes, only in Hebrew, but whatever, people would look at that and go, well, okay, that's a little crazy. That's a little racist, don't you think? What the hell? It seems like you're doing racist ethnic cleansing here. But there's at least some semblance of plausible deniability if you say we're fighting terrorism. Trump gives ICE power to arrest people at schools and churches while using common sense. Trump admin says that ICE can arrest people in and near places such as churches and schools, directing the agency to use common sense is a departure from the long-standing policy to avoid so-called sensitive areas. Dude, I'm telling you, Gestapo, ICE is straight up doing SS shit. And they're gonna do it. Trump said they're gonna do it, and they're gonna do it. And this time, unlike last time, there isn't even a limited amount of there isn't any semblance of judicial process here that can maybe even hold it up in the court system. You have a completely captive supermajority Supreme Court of the United States that will make everything that Trump wants to do constitutional. It's terrifying. Trump has issued an executive order that revises Muslim ban, but is also much worse. Here's a thread of the key aspects of the new ban. This is from legal scholar from the Quincy Institute, Mariam Jamshidi. Recommended any actions necessary to protect the American people from the actions of foreign nationals who have undermined or seek to undermine the fundamental constitutional rights of the American people, including but not limited to our citizens' right to freedom of speech and free exercise of religion protected by the First Amendment, who preach or call for sectarian violence, the overthrow or replacement of the culture on which our constitutional republic stands, or who provide aid, advocacy, or support for foreign terrorists. That part of the Muslim ban is specifically for college students. College students, many of which who are foreigners on international visas from many different countries, will be targeted under Project Esther, which is Project 2025's specific anti-Palestine division, where they will look at college students that have said free Palestine and try to deport them. This was also pre-written and pre-designed by the very same group that brought you Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation. Ironically enough, who provide aid, advocacy, or support for foreign terrorists, kind of goes against the exercise of religion protected by the First Amendment, who preach or call for sectarian violence. Yeah. So no matter where you are from, if you say Free Palestine, for example, and you're on a student visa, the government will try to come after you and deport you. I suspect that this process will require the federal government to set up Department of Homeland like snitch lines and hotlines specifically that can easily be undermined with a couple people that know how to code, I suspect. I suspect that a lot of this resistance will be decentralized and hopefully with a lot of plausible deniability. I would never urge people to do such things if such a hotline was to exist. Of course, I would never.
Sources tell CBS News Trump is also planning to ramp up operations to arrest unauthorized immigrants across major U.S. cities this week as he pledges to oversee the largest deportation effort in U.S. history. Chicago is now bracing for raids to detain and deport.
The new president tells us very clear. Everybody is the enemy. All the immigrants is the enemy.
Yesenia Ramirez has lived and worked in the U.S. while undocumented for 20 years. She spoke about the fear spreading in her community.
You don't see it, but you feel it. You have the panic attacks. You can't sleep.
Less than 24 hours into his second term, Trump also signed orders to keep asylum seekers in Mexico while awaiting immigration hearings, labeled drug cartels as terrorist organizations, and promised to send troops to the southern border. Last month, Border Patrol encountered around 96,000 foreign nationals at the southern border, down from more than 300,000 in 2023.
The Texas National Guard is already stationed here on the Texas-Mexico border and has been since 2021. Now, President Trump also signed an order going after birthright citizenship for children born in the U.S. to unauthorized immigrants, but that is already facing legal challenges from immigrants' rights advocates.
That's just against the Constitution, by the way. Like, straight up. Not even a joke, not even a meme. That is just completely unconstitutional. The real joke, of course, is claiming something is unconstitutional and expecting the Supreme Court to abide by that standard. None of that matters. We already know that the Supreme Court is completely captive to the whims of the current administration, and they will do their bidding.
Tom Homan, thank you so much for joining me. I want to ask with something that you said last night, that your deportation operation starts today. Did it?
Yeah, ISIS, they're out there enforcing law out today. And of course, as I've said numerous times, they're concentrating on public safety threats. That'll be our priority right out of the gate. So ICE officers are back to doing their job. Where
are these, are they actual raids? And how is it different from what we saw yesterday or the day before?
Well, look, I wouldn't call them raids or target enforcement operations. They know exactly who they're looking for. They know pretty much where they'll find them.
Well, I'm going to follow up on that in 1 second. But who is ICE going after right now? I know that you and others said several times that it is the people who pose the biggest public safety threat to Americans who would be approached and deported first. Is that still the case?
Yes, people in the country illegally that have a criminal conviction that makes them a public safety threat. That's our priority.
How are you finding them?
Again, these ICE officers across the country have a non-detained docket. They know who these people are. When they don't show up in court, they fail to leave as ordered by an immigration judge, or they have NCIC information on someone who was arrested for a violent crime here that's in the country illegally. They take those leads, they do investigative work, and through that work, try to find out where these people may be located, and that's the whole investigative piece they do before they go out and actually make.
If you think that the violent crimes the undocumented migrants are committing are not being prosecuted and investigated, you are out of your mind. No, he's using that thing that already is happening in an effort to basically do dragnet operations and grab as many undocumented people as possible, because they understand that even at this stage, if they were to say everyone, that would, make people go, that's a little crazy. So they have to make it seem like they're doing something justifiable.
And so what is happening as we speak is limited to those with criminal records?
That's the target of this operation, but like I said many times, in places like sanctuary cities where we can't arrest the
Good. Deport undocumented immigrants that have committed crimes. How is that controversial? Oh my God. How many times do I have to repeat this? It's called marketing. Even the dumbest hog understands this. Dumbest hog in power understands this. But for some reason, people who just retain this information, normal citizens like this chatter here, simply cannot comprehend that Tom Homan is lying in this situation. The notion that there are millions of undocumented migrants that have committed heinous, violent crimes on U.S. soil and have not been prosecuted and have not been subsequently deported or are in perma jail now as a consequence of that is fucking insane. The reason why he's making it seem as though that is what they're going after is because it's much more marketable for him to say that instead of saying the truth, which is we are going to do dragnet operations in your neighborhoods. We're going to bust down doors and we're going to grab the abuela that works at the grocery store that you wave hi to every day. He has to justify it. And the way to justify it is by claiming that these guys have done heinous, violent crimes. And he has to further justify that by claiming that the previous administration did not prosecute undocumented immigrants who committed heinous, violent crimes. Hasan, please see the truth. Oh. People from all countries come to Mexico to gain access to the USA skirting the law. First and foremost, the law is restrictive, okay? Specifically designed to make sure that people come in illegally or in many instances legally come in, but they want to deport those people as well, for the record, and they are working to deport those people as well, or take away their immigration status. That's number one. Number two, the normal process of coming into the United States of America, especially from a Latin American country, especially from a South American country, is unimaginably long and virtually impossible, especially if you don't have a lot of money. So that is precisely the reason why people do this thing where they seek asylum, which is legal. Seeking asylum is a legal process. And many of those people who are going through the legal process of seeking asylum in the United States of America that actually had their CBP-1 applications that were supposed to be today, when they were supposed to have their interviews yesterday, got the application shut down. So you're actually shutting down legal migration as well. I empathize with real asylum seekers, but we are allowing criminals in without due diligence. You don't know what you are talking about. If you think that the CBP-1 application does not actually have any sort of background checks, you're just wrong. Also, if that's the case, you probably assume, and it's not false, that a ton of undocumented migrants came into the United States in the last 4 years of the Biden administration. So why did they not cause an unimaginable sea of extra crimes that took place in the process? Or do you think they did, and the quote unquote woke law enforcement officials in every state, in every locality, actually secretly were all tasked with hiding this truth and simply did not arrest them? Or when they did arrest them and they realized that they were undocumented migrants, they let them go. Because in terms of the murder rate, for example, it's gone down in the process of unlimited migration into the United States of America. Perhaps it's because undocumented migrants, at least if you look at the data, are responsible for significantly lower percentages of crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens. Country is 330 million people, 29 murders by undocumented migrants last year. 29. We're really going to put a dent in that murder rate by doing mass deportation and concentration camps for 20 million people.
The alien. But when you release a public safety threat out of a sanctuary jail and won't give us access to them, that means we got to go to the neighborhood and find him. And we will find him. But when we find him, he may be with others. Others that don't have a criminal conviction but are in the country illegally. They will be arrested too, because we're not going to strike. And this is a difference between the last administration and this administration. ICE is going to enforce the immigration law. There's nothing in the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act, says you got to be convicted of a serious crime in order to be removed from this country. So there's going to be more collateral arrests in sanctuary cities because they forced us to go in the community and find the guy we're looking for.
Let me just make sure that I understand what you're saying, because at first you said that the first targets are those with criminal records. But you are also saying that those who are undocumented in the U.S., also who don't have criminal records, people who are working in their communities, maybe even have spouses who are American citizens, they could be swept up with ICE today as well?
What I'm telling you is when we go find our priority target, which is a criminal alien, if he's with others in the United States illegally, we're going to take enforcement action against him. We're going to...
That's called a dragnet, dude. That's what he's saying. You know, Israel style. Some real where's daddy shit. He said collateral arrest. This has nothing to do with apprehending criminal migrants who have done violent crimes. The current system already prosecutes anyone who has committed a crime on U.S. soil. Now, police are notoriously incompetent, but they're incompetent when it's an American citizen that commits a crime or when it's an undocumented migrant that commits a crime. They're incompetent across the board. That's why their clearance rate for murders is 57%. If you were to tell me we have to make the police more competent, we have to ensure that we have better detectives, we have to have higher standards for policing, I'm there with you. But if you look at that situation and you say, no, I'm imagining that all of the unsolved murders are done by undocumented migrants, even though the solved murder ratio doesn't actually make any sense whatsoever, considering that undocumented migrants or non-citizens in general, undocumented and documented migrants, are responsible for 1% of the homicide and manslaughter rate, but 100% of the unsolved homicide and manslaughter rate. You're out of your fucking mind.
On a forced immigration law.
What happens then? So the ICE officers gets an individual or a set of individuals and apprehends them. What next?
Another fact that I must remind people is that 1 out of every 15 household in this nation with 330 million people has at least one parent that is not documented. 1 out of every 15 households in this country is a mixed status household, a mixed immigration status household. That means there's a high likelihood that at least one house down the street from you is going to be getting this door knocking operation.
What do these ICE officers do with them? Because in some cases, and you know this far better than I, they haven't been deported in the past because their country of origin won't take them.
Well, what happens after arrest, they're taken to an ICE office and they're processed and put in detention. While they're in detention, ICE officers work on travel documents. The host country sends travel documents saying, yeah, this is our citizen, this is our national. Then we make flight arrangements. So they could be in detention from a few days for a few weeks until that removal is made happen.
What if the host country doesn't want them, as has happened in the recent past?
We have various plans. We have various plans. Other countries are willing to take them. We have third safe country removals. So that's something we're working through. But I think you're going to see less of the recalcitrant countries. Countries won't take their citizens back under this president, because this president has vowed that these countries will take them back. So I'll leave that up to the White House, but there will be negotiations with those countries who are pushing back on recalcitrancy, and they will be removed.
You know, I think that there is some kind of image that people might have, given how much we heard President Trump and you in the months during the campaign, and certainly during the transition, talking about what's going to happen of people being rounded up, loaded on buses, and dropping them off.
This is why I said this doesn't happen overnight. First, you actively dehumanize and you say there's a real good reason for why we got to do mass deportations. It's just mass deportations. It's just criminals. Okay, maybe it's not just criminals. It's all undocumented migrants. Okay, maybe it's some documented migrants as well as the undocumented migrants. But we have to do it. We have to do it because they're violent. We have to do it because they're invading the country. We have to do it because they're collaborating with the cartels. They're doing terrorism. Then you have to set up these facilities. The facilities are going to be to begin with, because obviously these are the people that you're rounding up and putting in this concentrated area are already now officially considered undesirables. You put them in these facilities. It's already too expensive of a process to begin with. There's a lot of legal hurdles to clear under international law. Maybe you can't deport some of the people. And also the maintenance of these facilities that are going to be in dire conditions are going to start, leading to some suspicious, mysterious deaths left and right. And in that process, you have a choice to make. Either you enslave them in permanent detention and you force them to do backbreaking labor, or you just kill them. And that's how you arrive at the final solution. This process will take many years, usually, but that's how you get to death camps. That's how you get to the final solution. Based. Okay, dude, sick. Dude, I'm going to tell you right now, when you hear something like that and you say based, that doesn't like, your life is still awful. You know that, right? Like, deporting 20 million migrants is not going to make you a more fuckable person. Cruelty that others are going to be subjected to is going to somehow elevate your status in society is a lie. Fix your own damn self instead of fantasizing about the state enforcing violent mechanisms against those who are more marginalized than you are. It is precisely that problem that causes you to further and further latch on to right-wing politics. It's so sad and so pathetic. Bro's pushing the envelope with hypotheticals today. You think it's I'm pushing the envelope with hypotheticals? It's not even a hypothetical. This is what I suspect will happen by telling you what has happened throughout history. It's happened in American history, and it certainly has happened in German history as well, and in identical ways too.
Well, I don't like the analogy of rounding up. Look, again, this is a targeted enforcement operation. The president's been clear on this. We're going to concentrate on public safety threats. But in sanctuary cities, where they don't let us take that public safety threat into custody and the safety and security of a jail, we have to go find him. If he's with others in the country illegally, ICE will not turn the blind eye to that. ICE is going to uphold the oath they took. They're going to enforce the laws enacted by Congress and signed by a president. And they're going to do that without apology. I mean, if sanctuary cities force us in this position, that's exactly what's going to happen.
How many deportations do you think that you can carry out this year? Last year, for example, the Biden administration did deport about 270,000 people, which is the most since 2014. I know you said ICE has not been doing its job, but there have been a lot of deportations? What's going to happen coming up?
Yeah, that don't count. That don't count, Dana. Yeah. By the way, previous deporter-in-chief, Barack Obama. Second deporter-in-chief, Joe Biden.
That is not accurate. The Biden administration is hiding the numbers. If you look at those removal numbers, over 80% were Border Patrol apprehensions on the border that were immediately removed. They weren't ICE removals. So if you look at what ICE has done in
they don't count. The more valuable ones are people that have been living inside of U.S. soil for 10 plus years that have been working a job. That's the real valuable people that must be removed. Those weren't impactful enough. Those weren't violent enough. Those weren't psychotic enough.
In the United States, under 4 years of President Biden, they have the lowest numbers of removals in the history of the agency, despite a historic illegal crisis on the southern border. So they can claim 240,000, whatever removals.
He didn't say that though. He said criminals. I hope you recognize that he's not actually talking about criminals. Or in his mind, he could be simply saying, well, you crossed the border illegally, you're a criminal. Now, not all crimes are equal. Here's what I'm saying. If you're illegal, caught up with criminals, then sorry, you know? Dude, where does this come from? Why is there no due process? If you're illegal and with illegal criminals by, okay, so you got a 14-year-old, okay, who's in a house. There's another guy there, an immediate family relative. The guy has a parking ticket. They bust down the door. They nab both of these guys, the 14-year-old and the adult. That's good for you? That's a good, bye-bye? Valid? Is that what you're saying? I don't think they're going after parking offenders. No, you don't think that. You don't think much. They're not even going after parking offenders. They're going after everyone. I think they're going to probably go after real criminals, my G. No, dude, you're just oh my God! This is why there's so many Trump-supporting, undocumented Honduran people too, okay? They just think that there is this idea of bad migrants and good migrants. That's what they think. So they go, nah, I know my immediate relatives actually voted for Trump, and I'm undocumented, and I would have voted for him too. Because guess what? They're only deporting the bad migrants. You're a idiot. They already deport the bad migrants. God damn. What the are we doing? You think when an undocumented migrant does like a rape or a crime or a DUI or something heinous that they just get away with it? Really? Please, what is going on, man? I swear since the inauguration, people have managed to get dumber even record time. No, it's because all the stupid hogs are now no longer embarrassed to be dumb in broad daylight, because they got Big Dumbo over there and his cadre of Harkonnen-style villains all over mainstream media preaching. So they think, okay, I'm galvanized. I'm emboldened. America's back on track, baby. It's so frustrating because I also hate the elitist, entitled liberals who operate with the same violence in mind anyway. But a lot of these guys don't understand that. They think, oh, this is just team sports. Get wrecked, libtard. We own you. I wonder how many times you will have the same argument today. I will be having the same argument every single day as we're watching like random, otherwise law-abiding, documented and undocumented non-citizens get rounded up and put into concentration camps. I'll be like, that person was simply just a person who picks crops. That person is responsible for the tomatoes that arrive at your table. Right now, that person is getting rounded, and they'll be like, nah, I imagine a fantasy where that person actually is a drug dealer and maybe even raped and executed multiple children in an orphanage. So I think it's valid. Yeah, I'm not saying that person should remain undocumented. I'm saying that that person should be documented so they can also, alongside the rest of the documented labor force, advocate for better wages in a unionized work structure.
Do you know how much money you're going to need from Congress to carry this out?
Look, I've been working with members of Congress, and the whole team's been working on to come up with a number that makes sense. But like I've said many times, we're going to use whatever money we have and do the most efficient operation we can. The more money we have, the more we can do. And I think this election proves that the American people support the removals of criminal aliens in this country. So I'm looking for Congress to come through and give us the budget we need.
One of the president's executive orders suspends
hundreds of billions for a problem that doesn't exist, that will actually, in the implementation of this quote-unquote solution for the problem that doesn't exist, will cause infinitely more problems, by the way. I rarely ever talk about the New York Times style approach to the subject matter. I feel like it's selfish and silly to talk about the economic impact of mass deportations, because I think that I am more invested in the immediate violence and the cruelty of the matter. But it's also an incredibly stupid thing to do for the American economy. The overwhelming majority of our agribusiness is undocumented migrants. That's number one. A quarter of the construction business are migrant workers. But then again, Trump clearly doesn't care about construction despite being a real estate developer, because he's now talking about implementing 25% tariffs on Canada, where the overwhelming majority of our lumber comes from. So clearly he doesn't care about any of this at all. He does not care about the economic impact at all.
So I just want to, again, make sure I understand this, because this is all new and very, very important with regard to the Afghan refugees, that it was a blanket executive order, but perhaps it could be amended or specific groups of people could be addressed as you get your arms around this?
No, the order stands as is, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We know that a lot of these refugees weren't properly vetted. There are things we need to fix.
A lot of these refugees weren't properly vetted. Another lie. Now they're talking about documented migrants, people who have come in here with refugee status. Now they are talking about removing people who already have the proper documentation. TPS for Venezuelans and Haitians, for example, and many other people that have come into this country under special status, special clearance, that are documented. Now, why would you also remove people who are documented migrants? Interesting. Why is Donald Trump trying to go against the Constitution and take away the naturalization of people who are born into mixed status households? Maybe one parent is documented, maybe one parent is a tourist, or maybe one parent is documented and another parent is in the process of getting their visa or in the process of getting their citizenship, and then the child is born on U.S. soil. Donald Trump no longer thinks that you should be considered as an American citizen. That is protected by the Constitution. Why, oh why? Do we have an issue with space in this country? We do not, just so you know. Is there a finite pool of labor that's readily available? No, that is also wrong. There is no lump sum of labor. There is no finite amount of labor, because guess what? When there are more people, there is more need for teachers, trainers. There is more need for construction workers. So there is technically no lump sum of labor. However, when you have a two-tier labor structure, you can permanently lower the wages of everyone by constantly hedging against the existing documented labor pool with migrant workers that you can exploit. It is perhaps the most un-American thing on the planet to just assume that we've had enough. And this is a nation, for all of its evil actions in its inception and all of the awful things that has continued throughout American history. The The one good thing about America that has caused the United States of America to consistently avoid the same trap that every developed nation has fallen into is permanent migration. Access to whites is not a human right. Dude, nobody wants your crusty, disgusting, neck-bearded, mouth-breathing, white ass. I cannot stress this enough. And this is something that you also know. You know this deep in your heart. Ain't nobody want you. It's with me Friday and you posted and everybody's not fucking with you. Crawl back to the hole you came out of. Access to the whites. Here's the thing. When you're a pathetic fucking loser who will perish at the mere sight of daylight, you have to grab on to fantasies of racial superiority. When you have nothing, when you have absolutely nothing, you have to think that like, no, there is some holistic spiritual reason for why I am simply superior by design. Okay. I have racial superiority by design. For a lot of racist people, that's what it is. It's like deep embedded insecurities.
Okay. So Afghan refugees, children in some cases of U.S. service members, they are no longer safe in the United States.
I want to say they're safe in the United States. The president issued an executive order to give us time to get our arms around this massive problem of immigration in the United States, massive vetting problem that we got to get our hands around. So that's where we're at.
Okay, so they'll be deported or not let in if they're on their way.
If they're in the country illegally, they have a problem. It's not okay to enter this country illegally if that's what.
Yep. There it is. The neo-Nazi himself, Mr. Vitesse Rend.